Welcome to the 2020 Greensteading Summit presented by the Green Dream Project. This is a special series of videos featuring permaculturists, homesteaders, farmers, gardeners, and people dedicated to sustainable living. We thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome to the 2020 Greensteading Summit! Hey everybody, I'm Tom Copeland from the Whistle Thicket channel, and I would like to thank Jessica and Jim from Green Dream Project, which you already know them because you're watching this on their channel. They are hosting the Greensteading Summit on their channel. Great idea. Sounds like they have at least a dozen presenters coming on. There's going to be interviews, lots of videos. It seems like it's a pretty awesome thing to do. And it's greensteading, not just homesteading. So I'm going to kind of talk about what I think that means. But first, I guess you want to get to know me. So I'm Tom Copeland. I live in the western mountains of North Carolina in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Smokies. I live with my wife, my daughter, and now our baby boy who's about 3 months old. We've lived on this property for about 7 years, almost 6.5 years. Before that, I had chickens in a garden and a little orchard and a very small backyard in a urban setting, basically. I mean, it was like less than 1/10 of an acre. So that's kind of how I got started. So I've had chickens for probably 12 years now. This video is going to be about homesteading and where to start and how to stay successful. And for part of that, I'm going to be talking about 2 books I've actually written that are available on Amazon. I think Jessica and Jim are going to do a giveaway. I sent them 2 free copies to their homestead in Arizona. And I think they're going to be doing a giveaway. I don't know if that's going to be on YouTube or Instagram. But basically, these are 2 books. They're mainly log books, though the beekeeping book has a lot of really good information to get started. But these are log books that I'm going to talk about. I'm also going to put them on Amazon at a discounted price. I'm going to lower the price for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So if you don't win the contest or the giveaway for Jessica and Jim, go to Amazon and type in these books later. But I'm going to talk about these in a little bit. First, I'm going to give you a tour, and I'm going to kind of talk about what I think homesteading is and where you should start. And then I'm going to talk about how to be successful. And that's where these logbooks come in. But of course, we got to do some feeding. We got our horses to feed, our donkey. We got chickens, we got turkeys, we got pigs, we got bees. Yeah, we got some work to do. So we're gonna kind of walk around our property, and I'm gonna talk about everything we've done in the last 6.5 years. And then I'm gonna try to tie that into what I think greensteading is. Talk about what I think homesteading is and what greensteading is. They're a little bit different, I think. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make with homesteading is that you have to do it all and you have to do it now. And that just really isn't true. Homesteading is not a sprint, it's a marathon. If I think about the ways we've improved and changed our property over the last 6.5 years, it's pretty amazing. For example, this is a she shed that I got for my wife. The cool thing about this was a shed that was at her childhood home for over 25 years. And when my mother-in-law sold her house, she gave us this shed. We had to get it here. And then I've been turning it into a she shed for my wife. It's kind of been on pause actually since the pandemic and everything, and the baby coming especially. And I know it's pretty messy right now. But if you can see, I've harvested locust posts from our property. Just trying to work with nature and use what's on our property. A lot like Jim and Jessica, they have dirt and they got rocks on their property, but wow, they are really using those dirts and rocks. I mean, they're building their house out of it. Isn't that incredible? Incredible. I think it's pretty incredible. So let's take a look at the she shed interior, even though there's stuff in it. And I'm going to talk about some of the, supplies that we've been able to reuse, which I think is a part of greensteading for sure. So this ceiling is actually, isn't it beautiful? It's not stained or anything. This was from my wife's childhood home. When my, mother-in-law sold it, she sold it to some friends of ours, and they were able to salvage this ceiling, and now I used it. And there's more ceiling there. The floor, if you can see, came from a friend's living room. He was redoing his living room. So the floor is salvaged. And I'm actually going to use this floor on a cabin up in the hills. So that's one way that we are greensteading, is reusing materials. There's also a man shed over there. Just another old shed. It's kind of my storage area. I have dreams and plans to make that bigger, if you can see it in the background. Again, when we came here 7 years ago, not everything you see was here. We've planted fruit trees, we've built run-in sheds, we've added fencing, we've done privacy trees, a front gate, a riding ring for the girls, a track system for the horses. And this is important too with homesteading. You have to do everything else that anybody else has to do for living and life, right? Is it harder? You know, it might be, but is it more fun? Yeah, it's more fun. So as we're walking around, hopefully you can see the front pasture there is about 1.5 acres. That wasn't fenced in, so we fenced that in. There's a run-in shed behind me that we had built. This here is a riding ring, even though it's a little overgrown. But that's where my wife does her horse lessons, and where my daughter does some of her horse training. So now we're headed to the garden. The garden's a little overrun this year, but that's okay. And again, with having the baby, he was born in early May, which is right when you're planting around here. So I wasn't able to do as much as I usually do. But we may actually do a little harvest here, but I'm just gonna kind of walk and show you some stuff. If you hear that noise, those are our mini pigs, which maybe I'll show you them. So right here, these are green beans that have been in my wife's family for 5 generations. Isn't that crazy? No, sorry, 4 generations, and then we have pawpaws that have been in her family for 5 generations. So her, I guess grandmother grew these, and now she's growing them, and we have kids, 4 generations. These are Appalachian green beans. They are delicious. So we got those we need to harvest. Right here behind me is a passion flower or a maypop. It's taken me 3 years to get this going, and it's a native plant to North Carolina. Lots of animals love it. Lots of native bees love it. I'm going to show you the flower. The flower is out of this world. If you've never seen a maypop flower, you are in for a treat. Okay, there's the maypop, isn't it? It seems like it should be tropical, doesn't it? And they actually make this strange round fruit, which I don't see any fruit yet. Maybe there's one up there. But eventually, flowers turn into fruit. And this is gonna be kind of a fleshy, hollow fruit that is actually pretty tasty. And you can make a jelly out of them. It's pretty tasty. So I'm excited to do that. Here's, we have some corn there, not much. There's my bee yard that I'm definitely gonna be talking about later today. Squash. Here's some patty pans that I need to harvest. If you can see them, patty pans. There's a little one growing. Oh, look, a bee on a flower, on a squash flower. So we have tomatoes. We have our bees pollinating the squash, the zucchini. We got some tomatoes over there. One of my favorite things to grow is okra. So let's see what the okra looks like. If you've never had okra, it is delicious. I love putting it in stews and chilies, fried okra. I actually need to harvest these. These are still pretty soft. This is a good size to harvest. This is a little too big. The flower is beautiful. These haven't opened up because it's still early morning, but they're in the hibiscus family. And just a beautiful flower. You could even plant these in your flower garden, I think. The nice thing with okra around here, I can harvest okra even in October. So it's not even, well, it's August now. So as long as you're picking, it's gonna keep flowering and you're gonna have okra for quite a while. So this is probably my favorite garden plant these days. Here we got some bottle house gourds and some loofahs growing. There's some more nana beans here. These are all over the place. We need to harvest these today. So this is just my little garden. It's not as big as it usually is, and that's partially because having a baby. Sometimes it's like, do we live in a zoo or a homestead? We don't really raise any meat. A lot of our animals are pets, and some people are like, that isn't homesteading. Well, you know what? Homestead the way you want to. Most of our property started out because of the horses. When I met my wife, I had chickens. She's had horses in her life since she was 13 or 14. Now she's a horse trainer. And there's still a lot of value, especially for kids, and raising animals, raising livestock. So even though these are just pets, there's still a lot of value in them. And we actually put them in our garden at the end of the year, and they can clean up our garden. They can work the soil, and they're just fun. They're just kind of adorable. So let's check out these mini pigs. There's Stella, Mr. E, and then we got Rudy. Get it? Rudy? Rootsy? He roots? Mr. E. Oh, buddy. Gosh, you're adorable. Yes, I said adorable. And there's Stella the pig. Stella the pig. Mr. E. Hey, Mr. E. We gotta feed these. These are the last outside animals we gotta feed today. Hey, buddy. Okay, behind me is our tiered garden. It's mainly a pollinator garden. There's not a lot of flowers blooming right now. We have the last of the gladiolus, some blazing stars, a little bit of hostas. There's also some native plants I put in here, some ferns, some azaleas. We also have a little herb garden. We got a couple tomatoes in here. This is our more or less pollinator garden. That's a great way to do greensteading, because these flowers not only support my honeybees, but lots of native bees like bumblebees, carpenter bees, hummingbirds. We have hummingbirds here right now this time of year. All morning and early evening we see several hummingbirds. So this again is our pollinator garden with some plants, and I know it doesn't look crazy blooming because this is almost a dearth right now for flowers. When I moved here, this was nothing but mint. So this has taken me 6 years to get plants in here, and more or less to eliminate mint, though we do have a little bit of mint. We are going to go ahead and sit down, and we're going to talk about what I think homesteading is, what I think greensteading is, where to start if you want to homestead, and then how to be successful. So what exactly is homesteading in the first place? That to me is not always easy to figure out. I feel homesteading is a big word. And when I say that, I'm a science teacher, so I try to use science on my homestead. I try to relate a lot of things to science. If you say the word science, that's a big word too. Science could be biology, chemistry, earth science, astronomy, physics, ecology. It could just go on and on, right? So saying the word homesteading, that to me has so many possibilities. Those are our turkeys, if you can hear them. Really, if you asked any homesteader, they would probably have a different definition. For me, what's really important to me homesteading is beekeeping, gardening, foraging, being in the woods. My wife would probably say it's training her horses. It's spending more time with family, which is for me as well. It's quilting. For my daughter, it's probably playing in the creek. So everybody has a different definition of homesteading, but really what I think it comes down to is finding ways to be more self-sufficient, more DIY, and finding ways to live a little bit healthier too. That's what's important to me. I'm not saying I'm Mr. Health, but I'm trying to get better. Now, being self-sufficient doesn't mean you can't ask for help, you can't get help. You don't have to do everything yourself. Sometimes jobs are too big for one or two people. That is fine, but it really comes down to, at least to me, is you're trying to be more self-sufficient. And it doesn't have to be a garden, it doesn't have to be chickens. I know that's what a lot of people start with. That's what I started with, but it doesn't have to follow a certain path, is what I'm trying to say. What else about homesteading? You also don't have to be on a 20-acre property like we are, and I know there's people that have 100-acre properties. Some of my favorite homestead channels are on smaller properties, like Josh from Citystead. Lives in an urban environment, has a big backyard that he does a lot of his homesteading on. There's also the Wilderstead up on the shore of Lake Superior. Totally different environment up there. So that kind of brings us to greensteading. Now, I don't know if this is a term that Jim and Jessica from Green Dream Project coined or not, but I know they started a Facebook page about it. greensteading to me is a little bit different than homesteading. Greensteading is thinking about the environment you're in and using those resources, but not depleting those resources. Using those resources, trying to blend in with your environment, and trying to live sustainably with your local ecology, your local environment. So Jim and Jessica in Arizona have a totally different habitat than the folks up in, I guess, the shore of Lake Superior in Canada, Wilderstead, or if you compare it to me in the mountains of Western North Carolina. So a lot of things I do, I'm always thinking about the local environment as well. I want to make sure I have a healthy forest. I want to make sure that I'm supporting wildlife. Those are things that are important to me. And there's definitely things I'm doing that I'm going to show you a little bit of what I'm doing that I think is in the world of greensteading. I am in our back pasture here, and I'm standing right by this nice big elderberry shrub. They're actually small trees. This is a native elderberry, and I have these planted in other places on the pasture. I use this for creek stabilization. Of course, the wildlife eats it, but I also try my best to harvest it, and I can make elderberry syrup. I'm also a beekeeper, like I mentioned, so I can make an elderberry honey blend. It's one of the ways that I like to greenstead. I try to use native plants, and I try to research how to use those native plants. We have a lot of walnuts here. Guess what I did last year? I made walnut syrup. That's right, you can make syrup from walnuts. It's just not maples. There's lots of other trees you can make syrup from. So I tried that out and I had fun doing it. I have a lot of tulip poplar. I'm going to be, I think, harvesting some poplar bark. There's lots of things I'm doing. Sorry, I'm checking out Silo or Rat Terror's coming to say hello. So really with greensteading, you want to learn about your local environment and see how you can work with it and not against it. That, in my mind, is what greensteading is. We also have bat boxes. There's lots of things we do to support the local wildlife. Just by having a farm with woods in the back, we have about 20 acres, like I said, about 13 of it are woods, and just by keeping those woods, we're protecting it from being developed. I also go back there to do foraging. I harvest logs back there, locust posts. I harvest rhododendron back there for fencing. So I use it as a resource. I even use rocks from back there, just like Jim and Jessica. I use rocks on the homestead a little bit, not like they do. So let's move on and talk about, you want a homestead. You want to get into homesteading. Where the heck do you start? There's a lot of places you can start, right? Where should you start? Where should you start? Where should you start homesteading? To me, the answer is simple. Start where your passion is. What is most exciting to you, most interesting to you, and then go from there. You don't have to be like anybody else. Just think about what makes me happy. That, to me, is kind of the root of homesteading. You're doing things that make you happy. Yes, it's hard work. Yes, it takes a while. Sometimes it's not always fun. It's not always easy. But I feel like most of us are homesteading, at least partially, because you get that feeling of satisfaction that you actually did something for yourself. And it doesn't have to be big. It can be growing a few tomato plants, right? So find what really makes you happy and start there. For me, I started the typical way, I think, with chickens, a garden, a fruit tree, a few fruit trees. I started doing a little foraging in the woods on my own. I had rain barrels. That's all when I was living in an urban environment. Now we have a lot more options. It is true, I think, the bigger your property, the more potential you have to do more homesteading activities. But again, even if you're in an apartment you can do homesteading activities. You can be sewing, you can be quilting, you can be canning. Like I know Josh from the Citystead found an urban, I guess, what is it, community garden where they have a plot at. You can find nearby woods for foraging. You don't have to be limited to where you live, is the point. So really start where you're most excited about. It doesn't have to be chickens. It doesn't have to be a garden. Maybe it's woodworking. The reason I suggest that is because if you're passionate about it, you're going to want to keep doing it. That's the beauty about homesteading. If you really love those activities, it doesn't seem like work because you love doing it. At least that's how I feel. So that brings me to my first book, A Year on the Homestead. And I'm not trying to make this a commercial. Jessica and Jim asked me to share these books, so I am. Now, I want to tell you, this is available on Amazon real quick. And I'm going to make this book and my beekeeping book right here, I'm going to make these on Amazon. I'm going to drop the price, make it super cheap. So cheap that I'm really not going to make any money from it for the next 2 or 3 weeks. If you go on Amazon and buy one of these books, it's going to be so cheap, you're going to be like, what? But I just want to do that to help you out. This is a logbook, basically, that I made my first year or two on the farm. And it's basically after a couple years, I really realized to meet my goals, I need to be organized. If I'm not organized, I'm not going to be successful. So this is not a how-to homestead book. This is a logbook that you can use. It says a year on the homestead, but I think it actually has enough pages for 2 years of recording. There's also maps in the back. If you want to do, I guess, constructions, there's areas for notes. But basically a typical month entry, it's 2 pages per month. And at the very beginning, you have your homestead goals for your month. So what are your goals for that month? What are you trying to accomplish? That's going to change based off of the month. Then homestead plantings. What crop are you planting? When did you put it in the ground or transplant it? What's the harvest time? And then eventually, what's your amount you harvested? There's also a section for your homestead animals, for births, new animals on your farm, any problems you had. There's a section for eggs you've collected, so it's basically a tick mark section. There's a very small section for beekeeping, milk, meat. Nature is an important part of my homestead. So if something really cool happened, like, I don't know, maybe you saw an animal you've never seen on your homestead before, like a fox or a bobcat, because we've seen those here. Then construction projects. What are some projects you're working on right now? Like right now, I'm working on the she shed, and I'm starting to build a little cabin for my daughter in the backwoods. And there's even a section for weather. Then what's important, there's a reflection section. So at the end of your month, you can take that time to reflect about what you did. So this, again, very simple logbook. I made it for myself originally, and then I was like, you know what? I should share this with people. This is not, again, a how-to book. It's a logbook that you can write your successes in. I feel with homesteading, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. I know I've gotten overwhelmed at times, and sometimes you gotta, take a break from a project, come back to it. You don't have to do everything right then, right now. I think that's really important. I know I've said it before, but you don't need to be like anybody else. Use people you admire for inspiration, but you don't have to be exactly like them. It's going to be different based off of your income, where you live, the type of property you have, and really importantly, your time and what you enjoy doing. Like, I have a full-time job as a teacher. I'm here in the summers and I have weekends off and breaks and things like that, but I have a full-time job, so I'm not here a lot during the day in the school year. So I have to figure out how my homestead life and my work life have to blend with each other, right? So this is just a nice little logbook, a year on the homestead. The next book I'm going to talk about, The Ultimate Beekeeper's Logbook. So I am really proud of this book, even more than my first book. This book I wrote, of course. I've been a beekeeper for about 4 years now. My first year I had a great mentor, still friends with him, work with him. But even though I had a mentor, there was so much to learn. And with beekeeping especially, I found, especially when you have more than one hive, you really need to keep track of data. So this is another logbook, and as you can maybe see, this is the one I'm currently using for my bees. Every time I do an inspection, these are some things I'm looking for during a beekeeping inspection: the overall colony health, how many frames of bees I have, if I'm using supplemental feed, if I found the queen, if I found eggs, if I found brood, is that brood capped or uncapped? Did I see any queen cells? If I'm harvesting honey, how much honey did I harvest? And then mite count, if there's other pests present, like hive beetles, wax moths, anything like that. So anytime I'm looking at a hive, if I'm opening it up, I'm writing down what I see. Because I may not come back for another 2 weeks. Sometimes it may be 3 weeks. It all depends the time of year. So this has really helped me become a much more successful beekeeper. But this is much more than a logbook, actually. There's a section, well, there's lots of sections. There's lots of really important information. This is not, again, a how-to beekeep book, but it gives you tons of information so you can use that information to help you make informed decisions on your beekeeping. I'll tell you this, beekeepers, you can ask 100 beekeepers how to do something and you'll probably get 100 different answers. But I'm helping you with information, especially that biology of bees. I am a science teacher, have a master's in biology education, so I'm really heavy on science to help me with my bees. If you can understand bee biology, that can really help you with your beekeeping. So these are all of the sections. There's the top 10 questions asked by new beekeepers. I talked to a lot of new beekeepers and I asked them, what are things you need to know? The language of beekeeping, basically beekeeping has its own vocabulary. And it's really important to understand that vocabulary so that you know what people are talking about. And then there's lots of journaling sections, like your beekeeping supplies. Beekeeping is expensive. Even if you build a lot of stuff yourself, it is definitely an investment. But every year I write down what I bought that year so I can keep track of how much I invested into beekeeping and to see if I make a profit. A year of blooms, this is really important. As soon as I became a beekeeper, I really paid attention a lot more to what was blooming in my area. I've always loved plant ID, but I really got into it because a lot of people think that bees just rely on ground cover flowers, because that's when you see bees. You see bees on ornamental flowers, but really bees, especially in my area, rely on flowering trees. Basically all trees flower unless they're a conifer, like a pine tree, right? So the major trees in my area would be locust, sourwood, basswood, I guess willow trees. Those are some of the major trees in my area. So basically you want to learn your area and I guess write down when those plants are flowering, because if those plants are flowering within a 3 to 4 mile radius of your homestead, your bees are going to be using that nectar, right? There's a section to draw your apiary setup. There's a really good section on bee life cycle. The life cycle of a queen bee is different than a worker bee, is different than a drone, and that varies on time of year as well. There's a section on how to find the queen, what to do when you can't find the queen, a section on common pests and honeybees, the inspection log. Again, the inspection log, I think there's room for 130 inspections. There's a harvest log, so when you're harvesting honey, if you're harvesting wax, if you're harvesting pollen or propolis. There's a bee business income section, so I make a little bit of money selling my honey. So it's good to keep that data down if you have customers you're selling to. Swarm trapping logs, if you're into swarm traps. There's a section on queen rearing. There's recipes, and I've used all of those recipes myself. So these are 2 books that are available on Amazon. These are just ways to keep track of your success. A lot of times with homesteading, you may not feel like you're getting anywhere. I know sometimes I feel like that. But for example, with beekeeping, which is my major homestead activity, and really beekeeping is right in line with greensteading, because you need to rely a lot of times on the natural plants in your area in order for your bees to be successful. That to me is 100% greensteading. I have 7 hives, but only 3 of them were I able to harvest from. 2 were packages I started. Another was a swarm. Another one was a nuke. And I got 77 pounds of honey this year. That, if I sell it for $10 a pound, which is actually cheap in my area, $770 I'll be making. I invested about $250 this year into beekeeping, $500 profit. That's pretty good. And I could sell it for $12 a pound in my area. Some places more, some places less. But honestly, I don't do beekeeping just to make money. I do it because I love it. And I'll probably give away half of it to friends and family. I'll probably give some to other homestead channels. But my first year, I only harvested 21 pounds. And I know that because I've been keeping records for 3 years now, and I can go back and I can see my successes. I feel like that's why a lot of people quit homesteading. They get overwhelmed, they try to do too much, and they're not keeping track of their success. If you can keep track of your success, you can see, wow, I'm really making a difference here. And again, I said at the very beginning of this video, homesteading is not a sprint, it's a marathon, or maybe even an ultra marathon. We've been here for 7 years, and if we look at what we've done in 7 years, we've really done a lot. So I hope this video has been informative. If you like this video, check out my channel, Whistle Thicket Farmstead. We have lots of great videos, at least I think. I think over 600 videos now. So yeah, I again just want to say thanks to Jessica and Jim from Green Dream Project for inviting me to be a guest on your channel for the summit. Very cool to ask me, very psyched that you did. And I hope people enjoyed this video, and I hope you watch the rest of the videos for the summit, because I know there's a lot of great people that are going to be telling you a lot of great information. Until next time, don't just dream, make those dreams happen.
Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to check out the other summit videos as well. They'll be available for a limited time on the Green Dream Project YouTube channel. Remember to check out the links in the video description for more information on our speakers and to find out how to get access to all the summit videos to watch anytime.